Hey, this is Just a Car Addict. It's been a hot minute since I've been able to film anything new. The last video I put out was just recycled clips to try to keep activity going on the channel. I had to have a small surgery and haven't really wanted to dig out cars and all that shit. I just got some stitches out yesterday, and I have a wisdom tooth that's flaring up today, so if I sound drugged, that's because I am. And we're going to take advantage of these few minutes that might actually be entertaining to talk about the Duster. So if you've watched some of my previous videos, you've probably heard me harp on about trying to sell this and it being such a pain in the ass because Facebook Marketplace. After dealing with just under 100 stupid messages and digging the car out 3 separate times, only to be stood up 2 of those 3 occasions, I think I'm going to take the car off of Marketplace and revert back to the original plan. By the way, if you're trying to acquire a vehicle, do not send "is this item available?" Okay, we think you're either a robot or give so little of a fuck that you don't care to write a coherent sentence. So you're probably not going to get anything of value back from that. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2. Now stay with me here because this one's a little tricky. Read the motherfucking ad, for the love of God. Reading comprehension is a very important lost art form. The number of people who asked if this ran and drove was astonishing. Now, I stated in the ad that it had no motor and transmission, and I posted this exact picture. What is confusing there? I don't know. So if you're unaware, Fairbanks is both a military town and we have a campus. So in my personal opinion, don't get offended, those are the 2 stupidest groups of people you could ever need to deal with on a daily basis. The guy who wasted the most of my time was some GI new to town. After I dig out the car, show it to him, yada yada, I find out he does not have transportation of his own currently. He has no way to move the car, and he offered $200 for the car, for which I'm asking $500. So for the purpose of transparency, I bought this about a year ago now for $300, and I believe I spent 50 or so to have the owner haul it over to my yard because my trailer's always buried. So 350 bucks for a very workable Plymouth Duster shell. I have wanted one for years. I've had a couple, and a Valiant and so forth. All of them have left the yard before I actually got to drive them because I was always working up towards shit like this. The original plan was always to find a 318 to drop in here because it is an original V8 car, which is pretty neat. So later that summer, I got the Jeep from a neighbor of mine. That actually has a 318 in it, Dodge axles, all that stuff. So I figured, oh, okay, the stars aligned. We're going to take that 318, stuff it in the Duster, and go do burnouts or whatever, I don't know. Then as summer continued to fly by, I found myself in late fall, having not done any of that yet, and still dealing with health issues. So I'm already behind on projects, and what do? I buy another, a $500 '74 Dodge Challenger. Now this is one of those cars I've been looking for a number of years and always thought would be out of my price range. So once I got this became the dream. Or nightmare, depending on your point of view. So at this point, I got all jazzed up to use the same 318 from the Jeep and throw that in here to get this running and driving as soon as humanly possible. Fast forward through another long, cold-ass winter here up in Alaska, and none of this is done, surprisingly enough. You might be able to tell by the little patches of ground showing through here. It is starting to warm up. We've been tickling 40 or so for the past few days. It's a little overcast today, so you don't have the fun cancer rays melting all the sadness away, but we're getting there. So now, without even renewing the Facebook Marketplace ad, I've had 24 or 5 people within the last 2 days contact me about the car. All with stupid questions, all with extremely lowball offers on what is already an extremely cheap Mopar. Now, you can't scroll through Facebook anymore on any automotive-themed pages without seeing some old guy saying if he doesn't sell his vehicle in yada yada time and date, he will send it to the scrapyard, crush it, so on. Do I understand that mentality to a certain point? Yes. Is it still fucking stupid? Yes. This may come as a shock to some of you who are motivated only from a monetary standpoint or watch too much Fox News, but these cars are not getting built anymore. What we have is all that's left, and preserving those is getting kind of important, at least to me. It doesn't matter if it's a four-door Impala, or an International Travelall, or a Generation Charger a lot of people don't like, or a simple A-body. Every classic car deserves preservation if at all possible. This is an unpopular opinion with a lot of the more recent generations. I would say all these cars are superior to modern cars for one reason: there's no fucking computer in them. So instead of crushing this like a dipshit out of spite, I am going to revert back to the original plan, take the 318 out of the Jeep, take the mystery transmission out of the shed, throw everything in here. That's not to say this isn't motivated by spite, because it very much so is, but that's how I accomplish most things in my life. Just look at that magnificent snow hat. So the three issues we're going to have here is one, I'm not sure if this has the car or truck oil pan in it, so I might need to get an oil pan and a pickup. Second, the carburetor's junk, so I need to pick up a cheapo from Amazon. I have never personally had any issues with those. I've been running one on the Charger for 2 years now. And lastly, this has some sort of overly complicated ignition system where to have spark you need to have the air breather plugged in, and there's just tons and tons of wiring and useless shit I would like to delete. So I'm going to go with just a cheapo eBay HEI distributor and get rid of literally everything I can, because the Duster does not exactly have wiring to begin with, so we're going to just be making do with what we got. Likely just a few toggle switches and buttons and everything, and then we're good to go. Now, in terms of brakes, this whole system is complete, so I'm hoping just do some soft lines up front, maybe wheel cylinders in the back, and it'll be safe enough to do what I want to do with it. So you may be thinking it is a rot box, and that's why it hasn't sold. The floor pans do need some attention. They were fiberglass in the 80s when that was the hip thing to do. Besides that, the only rot is behind this piece of tin on the tail panel, where seeds and leaves and all manner of things sit for 40 odd years. So it's rotted out behind that. Otherwise, I thought this black panel might be all, fiberglass and Bondo and shit, but no. There's only a dent that they poorly filled in right here. But behind it is perfectly good metal. As you can see, this car also had the half vinyl top, and it's perfectly fine. We have a relatively dry climate up here, so unless you're on the coast, cars usually fare pretty well. The most expensive part of this entire deal is going to be the drive shaft. This is not out of this car. This is out of a 75 Gran Torino station wagon. And a friend of mine talked to me into keeping it just for the tubing, and hopefully we can make something work with it. I'm not sure. If I need to have one built, that's going to blow the budget right there. Also, you can see the interior is pretty much stripped. I have all of the plastics and whatnot, just need to be put back together. Floors need to be reinforced, and I need to take the seat from the Jeep that originally came from the Charger before I switched over to buckets. In terms of a fuel system, I will either try to use this third gen Charger gas tank in here somehow, or I will mount some sort of fuel cell on this heavy-ass metal plate that they have in here covering up the hole they cut in the trunk. Either way, setting that up should be relatively cheap. You can see the original color here, stickers and all that. And the drip rails have actually survived. So personally, wheels and tires are about 80% of what makes or breaks a car for me. I'm going to keep these stock Steelies because cheap, but I'm going to try to find some sort of Home Depot rattle can that kind of matches the body color here to do the wheels, and then try to find some cheap moon caps for them. So tires would be the next big expense if I did not happen to have a stack of 14s in this snowbank that came courtesy of the dump. I've noticed a lot of your budget channels on YouTube either have sponsorships, which good on them, or when they're going through the breakdown of a project, they do not show you an itemized list of what they spent where. So that's what I'm going to try to do with this. If I need to purchase anything, it will be added to a list that we will tally up at the end of the build. I'm hoping it doesn't exceed $500. I know not everybody's going to have a 318 sitting around and a bunch of this other shit, so take that information as you will. But what we're going to try to do here is document a cheap, fun A-body build. What's going to cost the most money out of all of this is getting the car titled, registered, and insured. We're not going to count that in the overall build costs. And by the way, up here in Fairbanks, you can get titles relatively easy. It takes an afternoon and like $200 or so last I did it. I've needed to get titles for probably half the stuff in the yard at this point. Again, it's relatively simple. I would recommend going through the process before spending extreme amounts of money on a project. I'm not concerned about the $500 we might throw into this in case there's issues. There shouldn't be, but still keep that in the back of your head. I'll never understand people who don't keep track of their paperwork. So much of this could be avoided if you just had a dedicated folder for all this shit, but you do you, I guess. So I'm sure I'll cut down probably 30 minutes of incoherent bullshit down to hopefully about a 5-minute video that might make some sense. That's about the gist of what we're going to try to do here. Some of you are probably asking why the fucking retard is not building the Challenger instead of the Duster. Well, as you can see, the Duster is closer to being functional, and I would kind of like a win right now, so we're going to just do the Duster and then finish off the Challenger hopefully later this year. Here I am talking about wasting time and money on the Duster while the 38's over here looking sassy as all fuck, waiting for its turn. I hope it's soon too, little buddy. That looks like a fucking smiley face. That's awesome. So that's about where we're sitting. I'm starting the first official build on the Challenger out of spite. Good way to get the ball rolling. I'm going to make a few Amazon purchases, get things on the way, get the Jeep dug out here in the next few days. I'm sure it's going to snow again early April or so. We're not out of the woods yet, but I want to try to get as much prepped and ready to go as humanly possible. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. If you'd like to keep up on the Duster build, hit that subscribe button. It helps me greatly, as well as the like. Hopefully by the end of the year, we have a running and driving B body, A body, and E body. We'll need to see how things go. That would be pretty neat. I hope everybody's having a nice spring, and I'll talk to you later.